What is the man-child?
Well, manchildloser.org is what we're here to talk about tonight. And our introduction is our host is...
My name is Jason Joseph.
And I'm James Baker. And so we're gonna talk about our mission, which is really the man-child topic. And I think that what got us thinking about it was that it was just like a big epidemic in our society, and we figured, we knew a lot of people that we grew up with that were, freeloading off their families and society, and pretty much trying to get away of getting anything for free for the most part without really having to work for it. And it almost seems like that. And then when parents sort of enable their children all the way into the ages of, between what we thought was 25 and 50 plus, just based on our experiences, and they don't really, they just sit there in their rooms or in their converted, the garages of their parents' house, and they don't even, they're wasting their life away.
I'm going to interject. I didn't even know what this concept was until just a couple of weeks ago, and that's why we thought it would be a good subject to talk about. So, I didn't even know what man-child was. And then the funny thing is, throughout my entire life, I've met a lot of these man-children, so-called man-children, which I didn't really know what that was. But
you were saying that you weren't really familiar with the topic of man-child, and so I was already kind of going down this exploring this concept, sort of in a sort of a forced kind of a way, and I lived in an environment where, although my mom was a hardworking waitress and a restaurant manager, we grew up we lived in an environment where there was a lot of well-to-do, privileged people, and so those.
So you met a lot of man-children.
So there's a lot of those people had children, and those children became my so-called childhood. I like to say childhood acquaintance, and not really friends. But as time went on, and I was from a low-income environment, and I knew I had to do things like what most people have to do, even from not even low-income environments, just low to middle income. I chose to go to school, while a lot of these other people, they were more privileged, and their parents enabled them, and so they were able to live at home, were able to get all their life expenses paid for, and in a lot of cases they had allowances and were able to do things that people with really decent incomes wouldn't be able to afford to do. And I thought, well, how is this person even going to learn about things about discipline and responsibility when it's been given to them? And then I thought, well, at least that person has money, so I don't have to worry about it. But then I start to see that this attitude sort of crossed over into like low income environments, where these man children now living in these converted garages in the homes where they already had large families, and now you're this grown, able-bodied man who can pretty much go out and fend for himself and not be this burden onto your family. And don't think for 1 second. I think the man-child, what in his mind, what he's thinking is that he's out of the way, that he's not really, it's not really a big deal, that he's sort of out of sight, out of sound. But the man-child is the big elephant in the room to every family, and they want that man-child out of their life as soon as possible, and the man-child just doesn't get that, and sometimes the parent or the parents will enable that man-child to stay there.
So basically, what I get from this, a man-child is basically an immature grown man. So anyone above probably the age of 25 that, is immature in a lot of different ways, at least 3 different ways. But what are some of the criteria to qualify you as a man-child, would you say?
Well, I think we were trying to. Well, if we try to take some of the text or data from our website, the manchildloser.org website, we see that we have 5 questions there that anybody who visits the website will see that we have these five questions that you can answer that will allow you to or help you determine if you're a man-child. I think the first one was we thought that maybe if you're between the age of 25 and 50 plus, and you were if that was one but with that you were still living at your parents' house. You either had a minimum wage part-time job or some dead-end job
or no job,
and you weren't really contributing, not even close to what the money that you would need if you were having to support yourself. I mean, let's say for example you got to pay the rent.
Someone's supporting you financially.
Yeah, financially,
you're
right?
Not supporting yourself financially,
right? And even though you're bringing money in, it's very rare, I think, that the man-child is contributing even $500 a month or even anything. If they can get away with it being for free for the rest of their life, that's what their mission is. That's what they think. And all the other money that they get, they can put towards their own, like new rims on their car or some other, thing that's just completely insignificant to what that man-child's going to need at that stage of his life. So
yeah, you know what? I feel bad because on Reddit I've been reading about some guys that are like immature and they think they're not doing it. But the thing is, the fact that they even wrote that. But this guy was 23, right? Mm-hmm. And he's basically qualifies as a man-child, but he's young. So. Mm-hmm. And he wrote about it, so if you recognize it,
it's like alcoholism or some drug addiction. You have to identify the problem.
Acceptance.
Identify, accept. Accept that you're that fucking losing piece of shit that is a burden to people, and
it's the first step to recovery.
Yeah, to recovery, and so
identify, accept, and then you can begin your recovery process into becoming a man.
Yeah, and so I think that maybe some other qualifications, of a man-child is that you had touched on one of the things that a lot of these man-children they like to rob the prestige of the achievements of their parents.
Can I tell the story?
Yes,
about this?
You go for that. Take that over.
Basically, this is how the whole concept came up. So I moved into a new house, right, in the neighborhood, and I met this guy. He was like a young man. He was about 30 or so, not too much younger than me. And then I was like, oh, this guy's pretty cool. So I became friends with him. He knows I have a business. And then one day he asked me for advice on the business. So I gave it to him, and, I was saying, you should try this, you should try that. He's doing, I don't want to say what kind of thing it is, but I was like making a lot of suggestions, in which he took the advice. And then one day, I was telling him about something, and I could tell he didn't want to do it, and he was just like didn't want to face this obstacle. He just didn't want to do it. So then a couple more weeks passed by, and then he becomes standoffish. He's pissed off. He doesn't want to talk to me anymore. And I'm just like, okay, like you come home and your neighbor's there. You're like, hey neighbor. It was like one of those, but it got to the point where he would just like avoid me. He wouldn't look at me, which was kind of awkward. It kind of pissed me off too. And I was like, what the fuck's wrong with this? So it's 6 months later, and like he has a new girlfriend, which is good. I'm proud of him for that. And then I'm at his brother's baby shower, and I go to say, hey, what's up, man? How you been? And he just like blows me off, and he's like next to his girlfriend, and he's just like he doesn't want to talk to me. I'm like, all right. And then my wife comes to this baby shower, and she sits like at the table, and then he shows up with his girlfriend. He's like, hey, how you doing? He's all like, being all extra friendly and nice with my wife, and like, yeah, blah, blah. And he's like chatting with her in front of his girlfriend, trying to flex. And I'm just like, man, this guy, I'm about to punch him in the face. I was that close. And I tell Lee this story, and I said, Lee, why would anyone freaking do that? It just makes no sense to me.
Yeah, well, he
And
knew
his
that.
answer was, "Go ahead."
Well, the man children, he doesn't, he just doesn't know how to conduct himself in these kinds of situations.
Well, your words were like,
Yeah.
"He's a fucking man-child piece of shit."
Yeah, right, exactly. That's
Which
right.
is why man-child loser.
Yeah, and that's how sort of how the manchildloser.org kind of jumped off. We thought, yeah, because I was thinking of about 7 or 8 people that I grew up with who ended up being man children. Some of them still living at their parents' house, and after however many years now, and I'm just thinking about, okay, when I had to do all these things and
one
all
thing,
the journey of life, which I'm thankful for. But yeah, go ahead.
I was just gonna say that the neighbor, that was the neighbor's son, so it wasn't his house. I forgot to mention that. So he was living with his parents,
Right.
and he had some excuse for that too, which I didn't really buy. But go ahead, yeah. So that's Lee said this guy's a man-child loser.
Yeah, and so
and to me it enlightened me, and I was like, what's that? And he explained it. It's someone living in their parents' house that they're trying to flex because they got nothing going for them, basically. Like, this guy, he knows it.
Yeah,
so he's doing whatever he can to make himself look bigger.
Right, and life is going by, time is going by, and he knows it, and nothing's being achieved. And when you get to a certain level of life, let's say 30, you're already thinking of, you know that you should have a inside some kind of a decent job that's going to lead you to owning your own home pretty soon, and but when you're still living at your parents' house and you're basically a 17-year-old teenager doing the same thing, then it starts to hurt your ego.
Yeah, like you said, that basically a man-child typically has a high school education or lower.
Yeah.
Correct?
Yeah, low income for sure.
Yeah, and low level education, right?
Oh yeah, for sure, definitely.
Yeah, so I mean that's part of the problem, is some level of education is lacking, maybe, but not for everyone. But I mean, yeah, this particular guy did not have more than a high school education. He made that known to me, so he might have felt inferior in some way, and whatever they have to do to make themselves look bigger and better, right?
Yeah, and then it's
part of the game.
So that's really one of the symptoms too, is that they're disrespectful. They have no discipline. They're not kind. They don't understand the kindness of it. It's not like they went through the empathy of hard work and having to understand that it's better to be kind to people to achieve certain things in life. They just know that they think that if you're just mean, that kind of gets them through. So I guess the next segment of our topic tonight, which is basically just our welcoming or introduction to the podcast, is that the overall objective is to basically break the chains of the man child, so he can actually get out of this funk that his parents maybe created for himself through their enablement, through maybe hanging out with the wrong crowd and them influencing him differently. And so Jason had some really good ideas on how maybe we can approach this.
Like, we want to help the man-child grow up. Mm-hmm. In simple words, man-child loser becomes man. That's simple. So that's the goal. So we have to.
And so, and by doing that, let's say, and by becoming self-supportive, independent, responsible citizens of society, they will no longer be a burden to their immediate family, to the people around them, to society by going for government assistance. Because once an enabled man-child gets from this one comfort zone of being enabled, he's going to go to the very next comfort zone, and the only other next comfort zone is government assistance, and we don't want that. If you're an able-bodied man, we want you to be able to work. We want you to be able to enjoy the freedoms of life and what's there.
So our purpose is to, number one, help you understand and identify and accept that you are a man child, or you know someone that is a man child and you want to help them, right? So we could help ideally with identifying the situation. Number two, providing tips and advice to actually getting out of this man-child routine or habit and acting more like a real, like a man, I guess.
And some
or a grown-up.
And really some more concrete substance to it all is that we want to direct the man-child to a trade school, to some kind of something that will help them maybe get a truck and start doing some plumbing or something, whatever it might be. We don't want them to go through some 4-year university or anything like that, end up with a piece of paper and then end up right back to square one with a debt. We want that man child to actually get a certificate, get a permit of some kind or a license to where they can make money immediately.
Yeah, or basically work in a trade school. Or
that's what we're saying.
Something that's, in my opinion, it's not necessarily like a blue collar position. It's a job that teaches you a skill right away that has direct use in
computer graphics.
Use in a profession or trade or something.
Yeah. So we want
computer graphics.
So we're going to have a list of a list of opportunities for these man children, and we're going to have a financial assistance, and we're going to we have a rough plan on how we're going to do it, but we want to present this concept to the public right now and direct them to the manchildloser.org, and it's going to be a great startup, a nonprofit organization, and we're here strictly to help.
So why is it called Man-Child Loser, not Man-Child Help or Man-Child Forum? Or let's talk about that. I mean, we were talking about this earlier in the car, and my opinion was that number one, it's catchy, and a lot of these man children that they need to be, told directly that it's not a good thing.
Yeah, man-child sort of is. It's a description in and of itself. You're a man, but you're still a child. You haven't developed mentally. You're basically socially retarded. You've lived around a lot of other enabled man children who acted like basically children and teenagers, and you really haven't had to do what it took to grow, to develop into the next stage, which was the man part.
Yeah. So, but why loser? I mean, we're not trying to make people feel bad about it.
No,
we're just trying to awaken them.
And so we added loser to it because the man child, since he is a man and a child, and for the most part, from our own experiences, these man children are still mooching off their families. They're not doing pretty much anything. It's almost they're not even like incrementally going up towards anything. They're actually incrementally going down and becoming more of a burden and more lazy. And so a man-child in and of himself is a loser. He's a loser. He's on the direction of being just a lifetime loser, that's for sure. And so we want to break the chains of that enablement and get them onto the right course of being able to provide for themselves, and live life.
Yeah.
I mean, what
I think that's a good idea. I know people that do need direction, and they've wasted some of their young 20s and whatever, all their 20s, and they're still kind of floating around, and
if any of these men are looking for a lifelong female partner, what woman out there in the right mind that man children in his mind is going to want, right? Because he's going to want, he's already a man child. He thinks he deserves the best. So that woman in his mind, how does he think that woman is going to like him when he's still living at his parents' house and has nothing? That woman that he wants is probably going to want a man that can provide, can start a family, and take vacations and all those things that men used to be able to do, it seems like. But
well, that's why I feel like men and women are switching now. So the women will have jobs.
Yeah.
And then there'll be these man-child guys that hopefully they look decently attractive, and then they'll just shack up with these women that are like, that work and have salaries and stuff.
Yeah, but eventually
Basically.
she's gonna get tired of that too, and then they'll kick him to the curb, and eventually, and then they'll.
Yeah.
And
but you thought about that, right? Because that's what's happening. Gender roles are slowly
100%.
changing. Basically, women are becoming, more feminist. They have jobs, they have salaries.
Yeah, I'm seeing that.
They not necessarily need a man to take care of them.
No, not at all. And they can, and they're thinking, like men too. They know their independence now in this environment, and they don't need.
Yeah, you're right. But there's one thing I do know, that if a lady is like this, she's trying to level up with her man. She wants a guy that's, that makes more money than her. She won't really go down to the man-child unless this man-child is really funny or good looking or something that, and then she's like way up here. Like, let's say she's a millionaire, she's a cougar.
Yeah.
And then this is a man-child down here, and she's just like, yeah, you're fun for now.
Yeah, and there's some of those relationships that have lasted, and I guess those men are willing to just to take it as it comes. I don't know, but part of being a self-independent, responsible man-child is that no matter what any of those women do to you in your life, you can always because you're already self-independent man, you're going to be able to go out and get a good woman anyway, because
I agree. I think this should be the right way, but it's just the epidemic we're talking about here. That's like,
and it becomes.
I don't think it's acceptable, and I know families obviously don't want to have a man-child living in your household.
No,
but if the families accept it, then it's creating this whole breed of.
So we say, if you're a man-child or you know somebody that's a man-child, tell that piece of shit to go to manchildloser.org, fill out the questionnaire, send us an email, and then we're going to get back to you immediately, and we're going to show you how to break those chains and get you out of that cycle. So I guess. Thank you for the first episode of manchildloser.org podcast. This is
Jason Joseph
and James Baker. We'll see you next time. Take care.